Welcome into another edition of the Hops and Spirits podcast. It's another flight night, our fifth of one. We had a lot of fun last month talking to Greg Snyder of Chicken Cock Whiskey, who's kind of a legend in the game, and we have another great one coming up for you. These guys are doing some things pretty impressive at the world's highest distillery out in Colorado. But remember to follow us on our social media at Hops Spirits on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok for a lot of fun. And you keep up with all of our giveaways, our new episodes, and so much more. But let's not waste any time because these flight nights are fun. Let's introduce everyone. First up, you know her as A or Influenski on Instagram, Ariella.
Hey, y'all.
We have better known, I guess, as VA Bourbon Hunter or D, Damon.
What's up? What's up?
And our guest tonight is Bryan Nolt, who is the founder owner of Breckenridge Distilling out in Breckenridge, Colorado. Bryan, welcome in.
Thanks, man. Hey, everyone.
Now, I always like to start these things off with a fun question or a tough one, depending on what you think. So tonight's one tough question is, with summer almost here, although Bryan, you said it's snowing in Colorado, so
snowed today.
so you might be really thinking about this one. Are you more likely to go to the pool or find the river lake? What are you guys more likely to do, or none of the above?
Well, I am widely known in my friend group for completely hating the beach. Like, everyone that knows me knows I hate the beach, and I will go there 0 times usually. So I'm 100% a pool guy.
Easier to get a cocktail at the pool.
Yep, there you go.
Hey, what about you?
I would say, since the beach is pretty far from me, it's like 6 hours to the Gulf. I would say the river or the pool. It's right down the corner, but truthfully, there's nothing like a good bottle of whiskey next to a river or a lake. Or even a pool, whatever body of water. Just water and whiskey go side to side together.
I agree, Bryan.
Yeah, well, pool's a lot easier to get to for us, even though lots of times it has to be an indoor pool up here. But, you know, with the 9 to 10 months of winter that we have up here, we try to get away at least twice a year to the beach. So we'll do that in the winter. And then the rest of the time, it's pool or stream. You know, there's streams everywhere. But if it's flowing water, I'm fishing in it, you know.
I'm kind of, I love going to the beach. It's just a very, very long drive from Kentucky, and I keep moving farther away, and I don't know why. You know, we have lakes, which that's great, and rivers too, which I love, but there's just something about the beach, bringing down some beer, maybe a little later in the evening, some whiskey, and just sitting back and relaxing. And I just thoroughly enjoy it, especially if I end up taking a nap on the beach. It's just a good time.
There you go.
There you go.
Now, to get into the fun of our flight night, we have 4 varieties that we're going to be trying tonight. First up is the Breckenridge Bourbon Whiskey. For those that are watching, and remember, you can watch this on Facebook and YouTube. Bryan, can you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, you bet. So, you know, Distillery idea was in 2007, and then by 2008, we were making bourbon and malt whiskey. Mainly, and you know, my passion was, as I sort of mentioned earlier, was Scotch. I was a Scotch guy, crazy Scotch collector, and that's sort of really what got me going in whiskey. And so when we decided to make bourbon, I wanted to make a bourbon that a whiskey or a Scotch drinker would like. And so I didn't want to do like super approachable sweet one. I wanted it to be a little more complex, bigger whiskey. So we went with a high rye mash bill, and I've always done that. So the stuff we make in-house is 54% yellow corn, 38% rye, and the rest is barley, so very high rye. This bourbon whiskey right here, so this is a blend, this particular product. So this is made with our Colorado whiskey, which is 38% rye, and it's blended with other high rye whiskeys. And blending used to be, I love to blend because you just have more, colors to paint with. And it used to be really easy to find all these great whiskeys, but now it's really hard. So blending is a lot harder to do. So, it's kind of, we try to keep doing blended whiskeys, but they get harder and harder because you just can't find really, great other whiskey to blend. But there's a little Kentucky, a little Indiana, and a little Tennessee in our blend. Usually the youngest stuff we'll put in is about 4 years old, and we blend to a particular flavor that we want, and so the ages sort of range, but it gets pretty complicated, and we blend a lot of whiskeys together. The youngest usually like 4, and then we'll have stuff as old as 12. Sometimes a lot of 10 to 12-year-old whiskey in the blend. But 86 proof, and the nose on this is it's obviously a bourbon. You smell a lot of rye and white pepper, and let me know what else you guys are getting on the nose. But it smells nice and sweet, and brown sugar and honey and all the stuff you love in a bourbon, along with the rye and spice.
What did you say the mash bill was again?
38% rye, so 54% yellow corn, 38 rye, and then the rest is barley.
It's actually kind of with that high rye percentage. Actually, like I definitely get the rye, but not as spicy as I actually expected to get on the nose. That corn still kind of seeps through a lot.
Yeah, if you open it up a skosh, if you get more rye coming through, and you'll definitely get it on the palate.
Definitely.
Be interested to see how much rye you get on the next one we do on the PX, which is pretty much about the same blend, but finished in a Pedro Jimenez cask.
Yeah, I could say that.
Ooh,
just going by your first description of, you wanted a bourbon that Scotch drinkers would like. And I'm not a Scotch drinker at all, so it actually really scared me when you said that. And I was like, oh God, I'm not gonna like any of these. But like, this is actually pretty good. It's especially for the proof. I mean, what's it, 86 proof?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
86 proof is still pretty flavorful for that.
Yeah, definitely. And it's nice that we're going to end with the 105 today too, because you get to see it at what I think is the best proof. But the 86 is a good number for this particular bourbon as the typical American palate. Would want to drink it. So it starts getting a little hot when you go higher.
Oh yeah.
105, and then the magic happens, and it all of a sudden softens right back up, which is kind of crazy.
I like the nose on
That's
it.
nice.
Yeah, I thought that was a very inviting first.
And
It's like a lot of it's very easy. The nose is like rye, but then very sweet, like honey wafer. Definitely, I could see why this is an entry point to your kind of lineup here.
Yeah,
and I actually smell a lot of Scotch in it too. It's a little bit, it's like very sweet.
You got your Scotch brain on.
It's very floral, like pears.
It's very floral. Yeah, definitely.
Pears.
Yeah, it's floral. Yeah.
And then, am I correct too that you guys use snow melt water from the Rockies in this as well?
Yeah, it's really what that is. We're just referring to the proofing water, so it's just Breckenridge water. But if you look out, we're at 9,600 feet. If you look out the door of the distillery, you see the Continental Divide, and so all of our water comes from right there. So the snow comes down, comes through the mountain, and goes to this place at the bottom of the mountain called the Tarn, and the Tarn is where the water's collected from wells, and it's just it's incredible water. It's the mineral content is super, super high, so you get lots of mouthfeel naturally, and no iron, no sulfur, so it's everything you want in a mash and a blending water, and it's an unfair advantage because if you take the same water or the same whiskey and try to blend it with other water, it doesn't even taste the same. So it's an advantage. It makes it a lot easier.
Yeah,
look good.
That rye stays in the back palate for a while too. I like it.
Yeah, long rye spice finish. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Love rye whiskey too. It's Scotch, rye, and of course bourbon are my favorites. But I love rye whiskey.
Now, one of the questions I'm going to get to is on the Scotch influence, because it's kind of how you got started. But before I get to that, though, you're still a practicing doctor and physician, right? Like that's your day job, and then this is kind of like your fun side detox, relaxing gig. Is that right?
Well, that's what it was supposed to be. That's where the notion came from. I was actually in Breckenridge. I was fly fishing one day up in Mohawk Lakes, just below that Continental Divide, with a buddy of mine who's at Yardock and Vale, and he was complaining about medicine the whole day. This is in 2007, and I had just gone back from Scotland and was just on cloud nine talking about, everything I did in Scotland, all the whiskeys I drank, and these crazy rare bottlings that I brought home and smuggled, and it was just super awesome, and that's where I had the idea, and so that's really, it just came out of passion for whiskey. I just wanted to sell bottles at the door, cash flow. Bringing some, really good people that were smarter than me, knew how to do it, and just survive. And then it just took off, and so now it's like we have 125 employees. We're one of the largest craft or little distilleries in the U.S. We'll do 200,000 cases of product this year. So we're pretty. It's a busy operation now. So now it's like that's my job.
Yeah.
365 days a year, and I get to sprinkle in a little bit of doctoring in there as well.
Wow, it's almost like a midlife crisis became like a career.
Totally.
It sounds like it.
It was supposed to be my fun, my getaway, where it was this romantic notion of, drinking whiskey and, but now it's work. So.
Yeah, but that's not a bad work. That's not a bad work at all.
Yeah, there's definitely worse things.
and
that's good.
And you mentioned, that's kind of how you got your start, but obviously you guys couldn't. Anyone that knows how bourbon works, it takes a little while to get bourbon aged and up to it. So you guys, did you do vodka first and then but made the bourbon, and were kind of storing it away with that thought, or how did you guys kind of get started?
Yeah, so we started making the malt whiskey and the bourbon right out of the gate, like in 2008, and then started making vodka and shortly thereafter. But we didn't open to the public until it was like the very end of 2010 or like the day before 2011, I think. So we didn't release anything until then. So we waited and watched our money burn. While we were waiting to get some product out, and it just, the vodka is outstanding and, wins lots of awards and really features the water, which is what's nice about the vodka. But, we're a whiskey company and I'm a whiskey guy. And so I wasn't going to open the door and just start selling vodka. I wanted to wait. So we did, we just waited, 3 years and then started releasing our first bourbons at that point in time. They were young, but really still really good. And things age pretty quick up here, which is nice. You can't age anything outdoors here because it's, winter 9 months of the year, and it's really, so you have to age everything inside. And, but that allows you to keep, a good heat or a higher heat. We would cycle the heat cycle back and forth and added humidity. So things age pretty quick here just based upon that. And then also the aging environment's a little different too, because I think it has to do with the weather fronts and the high and the low pressure just constantly. It's just nonstop, and I think it forces everything in and out of the staves. So we found things age really nicely and quick up here.
Wow.
Well, that's awesome to hear, because our next one is kind of, what would you call it, the cousin of the bourbon whiskey.
So after I mentioned the blending part earlier, so I love having more colors to paint with, and when we taste through the barrels that we make, we put them in one of four categories. They all sort of fit into one of four categories. There's what we call fruit forward, there's rye, lots of rye spice, there is oak forward, and there's vanilla forward barrels. And so, it's nice to sort of get your ratios down to how you want your blend to taste, and you can blend in different ages and, and it affects everything from the way it hits your tongue to mid-palate to mouthfeel and finish. But cask aging is a lot of fun and gives you, it's an infinite number of new flavors. So the first one we did was the port cask, and that's been the crowd favorite for a long time. We use tawny port barrels from Portugal. That's just like peanut butter and jelly. That's just perfect. After we did that one, the PX was next. So I love sherry, and I really wanted to do a sherry finish, and being a Scotch guy too, I really love the sherry influence on Scotch more so than the used bourbon casks on the Scotch. It's interesting because if you drink sherry, there's like Fino. The Fino can be like super dry, like a competition for dry, like almost like a competition for hops in an Imperial IPA, or a competition for peat in a Isla Scotch. And then you go all the way to the cream sherries, which are super sweet. So I ruined a lot of bourbon, as we moved along, and the things that you would think would be the best aren't necessarily the best, but it turns out PX is the magic. So PX is a short for Pedro Jimenez. It's a great varietal, used in sherry in the Andalusia region of Spain. The barrels that we get come off of these ancient Soleras. They're like 100 to 200 years old. And people like typically have like either like they love the port or they love the sherry. There's usually one or the other. Which batch do you guys have, by the way?
I believe number 6.
6.
Yeah.
Okay. So yours will be slightly different. I got a batch 3 that I opened up, and so it'll be these batches. They vary a little bit, and so what you're nosing may not be.
Oh, wow, that
exactly.
smells delicious. It's like sweet
How
tea. Yeah, the sherry is huge. Yeah, how long has it been in the sherry in the PX
Yeah.
cask?
Up to a year in the sherry cask.
A year.
Yeah.
A year. That's a
I was gonna say one thing I noticed just looking at all the bottles right next to me is how much darker
Yeah.
this one is than any of the other ones. And
Especially for 3 years.
Is it first filled?
Yeah.
X cask. Wow, first filled PX cask.
Well, so it came off the Solera, and then we get them off
okay.
Solera,
Gotcha.
and then we use them once, then they're done for us. We've extracted everything out, and we've tried to do a round 2 on them, and they're just so extracted. You're like 3 years later, you're like, well, it's coming around, You're ready.
This is super interesting because it's like you smell and you taste the sherry, right? But it's not super overpowering. And I've tasted a couple of different sherry cask finished bourbons or whiskeys, and and maybe this is the fact that you guys put in the sherry cask a little bit longer, but a lot of times when I taste the sherry cask, the sherry just overpowers it so much, and it's just like that's all you taste. With this one, that's not like, to me, it's actually a really good balance.
Yeah, I think that when you're barrel finishing whiskeys, you got to learn like how wet of a barrel you want, and like the next thing we're going to do, the rum cask that's made with our own rum. And so those casks are wet. Like they're, like you could pour a little rum out of the bottom of that thing if you wanted. But with the sherry, the PX, it's got to be, there can be no sherry left in the barrel, or that's exactly what happens. The sherry just takes over. And sherry and bourbon can be a tricky combination. Sherry and malt whiskey is like magic. It's just like bourbon and port, go together. But sherry can work against the whiskey, and that's the thing I learned starting on the dry side. You get these just off dry notes that are not at all pleasant, and so it's tricky. This one is really tricky to get. But what I love about it, is it's the dark fruits, it's the raisin and the fig, and just that extra wood note that's very different. And depending on the batch, some batches really concentrate rye on the finish and some don't. This one I've got batch 3 does not. But I just did a tasting last week. I don't remember which batch it was. And the rye just, oh man, it was just so beautiful on the finish. It went forever. So,
This one,
I was just going to say the rye finish on this is very much there. It like actually plays so well against the sherry notes, that raisin, that juicy notes of like fig, and that rye spice gives it like more of a balance. It doesn't actually have a lot of tannic that you get from a lot of like sherry casks. This one's actually really good. I would
I get cherry too, like on like the very back. Like I get like the rye, and then like I get like the very end, like just a little bit of like cherry or something, like kind of sweet, like the sweetness kind of mellows out the spice note just a little bit.
Yep. And you'll get like some walnut in there too, like some kind of that drier walnut.
It was very, very smooth. Like, I mean, right from the start for me, it was very, very smooth the whole way through, which I enjoyed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't think
actually-
I've had a high rye in a PX cask before. A high rye bourbon
Right.
in a PX.
Yep.
I'm just
Is-
thinking, what is like the other one? I don't think I've had any high rye in a PX.
I haven't. Yeah, I haven't seen them out there either.
Is this the same mash bill as the bourbon?
It is.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, one thing I did want to bring up is you guys tend to win a few awards. Is from what I've read, is you guys are doing well, which is what you want, especially when it's other people saying you're doing well. But it's not only just for your bourbons. It's, I mean, I believe your bar manager got an award. Your venue space got an award. What does it mean that you have this kind of all encompassing kind of just an award winning place that people can go and visit?
Yeah. It's just, I mean, I think it's just, it, shows the commitment to quality more than anything. If we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. And I just want people to be blown away with everything we do or put out. And, I said we have about 125 employees and they're all high performers. You know what I mean? It's rare to get that many people together and they're all like awesome. And that's the culture. And that's why, that's why we win. And, Billy Keithley just won Icons of Whiskey Bar Manager of the Year this year. So that's a huge honor. We also this year won from Whiskey Magazine, Icons of Whiskey, number 2 distillery attraction in the U.S. Sazerac House got number 1, that brand new like mega $1 million thing they did in New Orleans. It's awesome. Can't wait to check it out. But so to finish number 2 to that, was pretty cool. But yeah, the awards have been constant, and sort of I think that's what kind of ruined my plan for this little romantic business that I wanted to run. When we released that first bourbon, I talked to our master distiller Jordan at the time, and I said, "Hey man, what's like the hardest whiskey awards to win?" He said his opinion it was International Wine and Spirits out of UK, and they only give out 3 golds in the bourbon category, and we got one of the 3, so that sort of got us on the map. And then we had it was New York International Spirits Competition, I think. We went head to head against the Pappy 23, and we were the highest scoring whiskey. We got 96 with this whiskey here, and Pappy 23 got 95.
Oh wow!
And we won Distillery of the Year. I don't know, 5-6 years. We've won Icons of Whiskey for this one here also. Well, between this, the Port Cask, and the PX, they've won Best American Blended Whiskey with Whiskey Magazine, Icons of Whiskey, 5 out of the last 6 years. So it's just win. Our gin won World's Best Gin at the World Gin Awards this year. So that's just it's a. I'm not, it's because it's passion. It's about the product. I didn't do this because I wanted to flip the distillery and make money. I did it because this is what I want to do. And so the commitment is like obscene. The attention to detail and the commitment by all the staff is there. And so the wins are for them, because we have great people and I let them do their thing, and they're just awesome. And with the facility winning the awards and stuff like that, that's important because that's how we market. We really go head to head against like Woodford and the big brands that are owned by giant multinational companies. But I don't have $700 million for marketing one SKU, like they do.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, I don't think we ever will. But but so the way we compete is by just having the portfolio approach where people are willing to try stuff across the whole portfolio, and they like it and they share it with their friends, and then they come on site and they're like, "Wow, this place was freaking awesome! Like I just can't believe what just happened here." I'm blown away, and so they take a bottle home and share it with their friends. So that's how we do it. So it's awesome that the distillery and Billy and everybody, they just keep winning.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say you've got quite the portfolio, and you've got quite the Breckenridge is a beautiful part of the country. Now, one of the other ones in the portfolio that we're going to try, like I said, if you're watching the episode, you get to see the lovely bottle, is the Rum Cask Finish, batch number 7. And now you said you guys make your own rum. Is that right?
We do, yeah. So we do. It's a turbinado sugar and molasses rum, and then we only sell it in the spiced as a spiced rum, and that's kind of a little niche project, but it's a lot of fun. The reason we did it was because don't get me wrong, man, we love Captain Morgan, and a Captain Morgan and Coke. I am totally down with that on the beach or at the pool. I love it. But we wanted to make a spiced rum in the style that originally that those were based off of, and so it's a huge pain to do it the right way. You have to do multiple different macerations, right? So there's no fake flavors in it. It's all done with macerations of fruit peels, spices, roots, and barks, and all that stuff. It's really complicated, but it makes an awesome spiced rum. And we love tiki cocktails too, so it's nice to have in there. But as we
do you do that when you're skiing and snowboarding? Is that the drink they have then? The spiced rum?
Spiced rum?
Yeah.
Spiced rum's more like the campfire. It's like the campfire, your dram around the campfire, or your tiki cocktail. Like if you want to take it to the next level, you throw that in there, and it's like, nope. So as we were,
I did saw.
Go ahead.
No, sorry, I did saw spice whiskey on one of the products. Is that using spice whiskey that you're okay?
Yeah, we do that too. And that one was we just started putting that out. It's all the holiday spices, so we started putting that out at the holidays, and it became a super cult thing. And there was always a line at the door, and it would sell out. And so finally, we just had to make it year round, because people were always asking for it. I got tired of telling people no, But so with the Rum Cask Finish, so as we were sitting there, we were doing the macerations. You put the sort of the like ingredients together when you do the maceration, and they'll go hours to days. And so when you're sitting there and you're tinkering on it and you're drinking bourbon, you start to realize a lot of these flavors really go together. And so we took a very long time to figure out how to get the spiced rum just right to finish the whiskey in it. And this one's dangerous. I was afraid that after we released this, people weren't going to drink any of our other whiskeys, because this one's kind of the bomb. Everybody loves it, whether they're an aficionado, whiskey snob, or not. They tend to love this one.
I was waiting for you to finish your spiel, because I was going to say the same exact thing, because I don't know what you guys did to this, but this is completely different than I thought I was going to taste with a Rum Cask Finish. The nose is like a butterscotch candy, and I mean this is delicious. Like
the nose is butter. Just it reminds me of butter.
Yeah, totally different than the first two. Totally different than the first two.
It doesn't even. It's so unique, and nothing I've ever tasted before. And I mean, like you were explaining, like competition with Captain Morgan and everything. It's like you taste the spice rum in here. It's like, but it meshes so well with this mash bill. It's amazing.
It does. It's kind of like a buttery French toast with syrup on it. It's like
it's so good. It's smooth.
Yeah, there's there's whiskey critics out there that it's like some of them love you, some of them hate you, and always want to beat you up. And I'm not going to name any names, but there's this one group that's been, man, they've just been always, I felt like, really hard on us. And but we kept sending them stuff, and when this one came out, they said it was their whiskey of the year for 2021. I couldn't believe it. We finally got them.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, like it's just like it's so like it's sweet, and then it's almost like right when you think it's going to be a little bit too sweet, that rye just cuts right through and just mellows everything out, and it just balances so much. I could finish this bottle tonight if I wanted to. Probably my wife wouldn't be happy, but I probably would.
Yeah, that's well put. That's exactly it. It's just, it gets you, and then you're thinking, okay, it's going to get sweet, but then no, Then it just goes to mouthfeel, and then the spice kicks in, and then the rye kicks in, and then the finish is spicy. And man, it's just it's yeah. So this is the crowd favorite now, and we knew it would be. And this thing just got allocated overnight. And I'm actually putting in a new still just to make more rum, so I can get more barrels. And now I got to figure out what to do with the rum because we don't sell that much rum. But something with it.
Well, then you're good though to make the bourbon that'll pay for all the rum that you just bought for yourself.
Exactly.
I think I think it was Barrel Bourbon talking about how they became one of like the world's #1 purchasers of one specific like barrel because they wanted to use it in a finish.
Oh, yeah, the pear brandy. That's what they do.
Yeah, so that. It happens.
This is honestly one of, if not the, like one of the most unique pours I've had, and I don't even know how long. And sometimes unique is a bad thing, but not in this case. This is a really, really good pour. And I'm someone who doesn't even typically enjoy low proof stuff at all, but you just got so much flavor on there, and there's so much going on the palate and the nose. Like that one really excites me.
No, that's super enjoyable. Now you kind of touched on this. You guys are putting in another still, but can you talk a little bit about your setup and how you came with that? Because that's kind of akin to what Maker's Mark originally was. Is that right?
Yeah. So so back in 2008, we put in it was a custom Vendome pot still with an onion and then 4 plates in it, and that still runs today. It just makes the malt whiskey though. It's great for bourbon, but really great for the malt whiskey as well. And we just had a 500-gallon system in there, a 500-gallon mash kettle and 500-gallon fermentation tank. So that room's still there. The only difference in there now is the tanks are 1,000 gallons. The fermenters are jacketed. We control temperature because we want to drive the yeast to give us the exact specific things we want. And we use a lauter tun now instead of a mash tun because it's making malt whiskey. The bourbon room, though, it was a several $1 million CapEx project for us that we did several years ago. It's 10,000-gallon system, so 10,000-gallon mash kettle, 10,000-gallon jacketed open top fermentation tanks, and then column still. It's 42 feet tall with a doubler, and that's where all the bourbon's made. And then we also have an alembic still, which we do all the botanical stuff on. So that's where the gin is made, and we make a lot of stuff that we also don't sell, but we use in our bar and cocktails. So we do an absinthe, we do all sorts of stuff, all sorts of botanicals. We have an aquavit that we sell. So anything botanical or done on the alembic still.
I did have a question. I was reading the label and it says blended bourbon whiskey finish in rum barrels with natural flavors added. What is the natural flavors added? Is that the natural flavors added to the rum barrel and then the whiskey goes in there?
Yeah, so the natural flavors are just what was in the rum. So
got it.
Spiced rum. So it's things like mace and kola nut and
got it.
And
okay. I was going to ask that question too.
Cherry bark and all that kind of stuff. Roots bark. So that's it. It's all the same stuff. We don't add anything.
Okay.
So it's just the rum barrel and the whiskey.
Can I make a note thing on my nose? I smell a lot of what reminds me of a Campbellton Scotch. It's really impressive, by the way. Yes, I get a lot of saltiness.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I mean, people will pick that out of our whiskey sometimes.
It's impressive. When I smelled it, I was like, "Whoa, this is not what I'm used to in terms of a high rye bourbon finished in rum cask." So
it's like a buttery popcorn.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I get from a Springbank. Just FYI, Springbank 10 would have that buttery note.
And I remember, when I was doing all my Scotch escapades and Scotland escapades and stuff, there were no Campbellton distilleries even open back then, so it's awesome to see them all come back. And, this was all born out of it really came out of my Scotch club. So I was such a whiskey nerd. I started this Scotch club, and we get together with this group of people, like maybe 3 times a year, and you'd bring, it was usually Scotch. I mean, people would bring bourbon and stuff like that too, but it was mostly Scotch. And if you showed up and you brought a bottle you found at the liquor store, you didn't get invited back. So it was for people that were really serious about it. And so a lot of these people, they'd go to Scotland and do pilgrimage and find all the old bottlings, from the independent bottlers and stuff from the distilleries that had gotten mothballed or razed to the ground during the 80s when the Scotch bubble burst. But I'd show up with one time I brought a $12,000 bottle of Scotch, and another time I brought an $18,000 bottle of Scotch. Like, that's how big of a whiskey
Sheesh.
I am. Yeah,
I love it.
It's like that.
I think my wife would kill me.
Yeah. Well, she'd probably really kill you if you said, "Hey, honey, I'm gonna take our life savings and open a distillery." We're talking all your savings, your 401k, your kids' college fund, everything. And when we got going, it was tough hoeing back then because you couldn't borrow money for a distillery, so you'd have to personally guarantee everything. Yeah. And then it's not fun to talk about, but the tax structure in America is really difficult for a small business, especially if you're making whiskey, because if you have $1 in your checking account to start the year, and then you make $1 million, so you have $1 million at the end of the year, but you spend another $1 million to lay down more bourbon, they still tax you on $1 million, even though you still have a $1 in your account, because you can't expense it until you sell it. So it's really, it's terrible. It's a terrible model. And so it really pisses you off when GE and Apple don't pay tax. But anyway, there were times I sold my house at one point to keep the distillery going in the early years. So my wife, you're talking about patient wives, man, I got one.
Hey, man, that's an amazing story, though, man. I mean, honestly, it's you hear a lot of stories where they do the same exact thing you did, but then they weren't successful, So the fact that you did this and the fact that you were able to crank out a good enough product to where, eventually people caught on and start, really start catching on the wave, that says something about the product that you use. So, that's a risk that, one, I would never take, and two, my wife would literally never let me take anyway. So, that's amazing.
Yeah, no, the only thing I think of Boulevard Brewing, the guy literally built, where they were based out of, ended up moving into the brewery with his family. And that's how they did things. That's kind of almost what it reminded me of. And that takes,
all those guys. That's where I got inspiration from, honestly, was from all the American brewers. You know what I mean? And including the guys at Boulevard, including Jim Cook, at Sam Adams, and, just all of them. It was inspirational to see what happened. And that was sort of my theory going into this was I said, hey, I'm going to open a distillery, and you want to you interested in investing, or whatever. People would be like, oh, a brewery? I was like, no, they didn't even know what I was talking about. 2007. But I'm like, look, this is what happened in craft beer, and I think the same thing's going to happen with spirits. So I think it's a risk worth taking, and
that's awesome. Yeah, cheers to that.
Yeah,
cheers to
absolutely.
That, to Americans making risks like that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's worked out well for you. And our fourth bottle for tonight will be the high proof blend, which I'm pretty sure Damon will love, or at least get close to what he considers high proof these days. So you can talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned before, sort of how we blend and pick and choose barrels, and we put them into 1 of 4 categories when we taste them. But when the distillers and I are tasting whiskey, we just we taste it at barrel strength, and that's just kind of what we're used to, and that's where we like it. And so you're talking it's 120 ish, somewhere in that neighborhood. So we started off, we figured American palate was dialed in at about 86 early on, and I think we were right. And then as we started doing the barrel finishes, we started bringing them up to 92. And then we decided we wanted to release a high proof, especially to keep the bartenders happy, because they really wanted a high proof. And so, after you start going from 92 on up, it keeps getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And you're like, I don't know how many people are going to like this. And then all of a sudden you get to 105 and you're like, whoa, something just happened. Like, man, the magic just came together on this whiskey. And then when you get above 105, it just gets hotter. So 105 is a magic proof for this whiskey. And it's definitely the distiller's, it's my clan's favorite proof.
Yeah, this is on the blend I was looking at. It says minimum of 2 years. What's like the highest year that goes into this blend usually?
Yeah, probably like 12. And
12. Wow.
12.
Yeah, we do we just say the 2 years. It's almost kind of like, honestly, an in-your-face kind of statement. You know what I mean? Because we've never released a whiskey at 2 years old. But the rule is, for a straight whiskey, it has to be 2 years. So we're like, fine, it's at least 2 years old. There you go. It's funny too. You have that statement on there, and people review your bourbon. It's always really entertaining to see what people say.
Wow.
There are people out there that are really excellent at tasting whiskey, and then there are people that aren't. And it's funny when you read a review of something that was mostly like 12-year-old whiskey, and the review's like, well, it's really young, but for a really young whiskey, it was really good. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, I just get a little bit of joy out of that. Sort of exposing people that probably shouldn't be reviewing whiskeys. But anyway, the youngest stuff in here is like 4 to 5 years old, and then it'll have a lot of like 8 to 12 in this one.
Yeah, with this high proof, that rod definitely sticks out a lot more.
Yeah.
And it kind of hits you in the face. Yeah, but you still get that sweetness. It's almost like sweet on the back. I'm sweet on the front and the back, and that rod just sticks on that back palate forever.
Yep, I agree with that.
100%. I mean,
the other thing I would add is the
would you consider this as your house blend? Like, what's like your house profile?
I mean, I would say everything else is closer to the typical. When we're doing the blends, everything else is more typical. This one is we blend this to a particular flavor profile, so the ratios are different on this one.
Okay.
It's too bad we don't have a single barrel, because the single barrels are all, those are all grain to glass. But we have a bunch of products that are all grain to glass Breckenridge. But the single barrel is cool because it really we pull out the barrels that concentrate butterscotch candy, like the yellow butterscotch candy, like your grandma or great grandma would have had, like that. And it's such a coveted note in bourbon. So the single barrels are like that. And with the high rye mash bill, the aging environment up here pushes that butterscotch flavor. So it's nice, but we pull the complete butterscotch monsters out for the single barrel.
So we're doing this again next week with those, or what?
Let's do it. Yeah, that's my favorite one. I mean, I love the high proof. The high proof is like, it's one of my favorites for sure. But the single barrel it's just so unique to get that much butterscotch in a bourbon. It's like it almost doesn't seem possible. It's that uncommon. Yeah. There's those few coveted notes. There's like that like bananas Foster you get on the nose of the Pappy 23. You're looking for that. And then the butterscotch, like butter is so hard to find the butterscotch in bourbon. So that's what's so awesome about that one.
Agreed.
I'm liking this one though.
What do you say?
I'm liking this one, and it's confusing me because I can't figure out what I'm tasting.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should have done this one. I wanted to save it to the end because it's like, which one are you gonna kind of ruin in the flight? You know what I mean? Because you're gonna go a different direction, and this one definitely powers through the flavors that we've had, but try to get in, by itself, and
it's not a bad thing that I'm saying that. It's just I'm just struggling on it.
Yeah. Your palate's kind of been taken all over the place. You know, you had the PX and you had all the rum and the spices, and
Yes.
now you're coming back.
Has a really nice finish, like very sweet, like not a lot of tannics in the finish, which not a lot of wood. And just a question. So you guys are making your own bourbon and American single malt now. I saw that there's Dark Arts, which is one of the products, which is a blend. But there, I don't see any American single malt out of Breckenridge yet. Is that correct? Or bourbon out of
So the
Breckenridge?
Dark Arts is technically American single malt whiskey, and so that was the first thing we started making along with the bourbon. And it's 100% malted barley, a lot of specialty malts. It's not a blend. It's all grain to glass Breckenridge. The reason why it's called what it's called is because the American single malt category technically doesn't legally exist yet, and you know we're very much by the book.
Interesting.
And you know, until that can, I'm on the commission. You know, when we get that done, we'll then make the switch. But it's American single malt. The trick with malt whiskey compared to bourbon is, you know, up here, bourbon in like 4 years is just absolutely delicious. 4 years of aging up here, the bourbon is so nice, especially with the rye. The rye spice is at its peak at 4 years, then starts to drop off after that. The malt whiskey, though, man, I mean, we don't release it till it's at least 10 years old. You know,
Sheesh.
so it takes that long. It's just the angular young oak doesn't really dissipate until that point in time. And a lot of it, you know, has to do with the fact you're aging it mostly in used oak, so it's in used bourbon casks. We do put a certain percent into new oak, about 10 to 12%, and then we blend the two to vat the two together when we release the Dark Arts. But you know, it's a Ferrari monster truck is what I call it. You know, it's this massive whiskey, and it's a cult whiskey, and that's why it's $275 a bottle, and I can't keep it in stock, you know, no matter how much I make. So it's awesome and unique too. But we're getting ready to release some halos off of it, and so we're actually taking the Dark Arts and we're blending it with Scotch whiskeys. I worked on this for over a decade to get the right with Scotch whiskeys together with the Dark Arts, and that release is called Two Clans. You can see it on our website. There's none available right now.
Yep.
We're getting ready to release a bunch here, probably in about 4 weeks, and then by next year it'll be just out in distribution. It'll be everywhere, but it'll be allocated. But that's more in line with what you'd be used to, like in a really awesome Scotch whiskey. It's got a little bit of everything except peat. So the Two Clans is not peated. There's a lot of cherry smoke in it, but no peat. And for the peat lovers, it's brother or sisters coming out, and that's called Peat Fetish. And that one is as peaty as you can handle it. And with that one, we actually took, we had the barley malted in Scotland and like smoked till you couldn't get any more phenolic concentration in it, and then brought it back over and made it here. So it's crazy. I mean, it's like absurd peat. It's very medicinal, old Band-Aid, all of that. Iodine, you know, all the fainty notes. It's massive.
Ooh.
I was gonna say, you just like hit Ace like right in the heart there. She's loving
All I can
that.
hear is like, are you talking about Lefroy?
It's like, you know, Lefroy and Lagavulin were definitely inspirations for that one. You know, and the Dark Arts, the inspiration for Dark Arts really came from Glenn Rangy's Signet. And some
Really? I was thinking another one, you know?
Yeah, no, it really came from Signet, because really sort of the rule book or the heritage of Scotch is, I mean, there's 5 regions, but it's either peated or it's not, you know what I mean? And you don't mess with the barley. Like you don't tend to like burn the starches to get flavor at the sacrifice of ethanol yield. You know, they don't do that, but American brewers do. That's how they get all the different multi flavors in American beer. So that was inspiration on, or the technique behind that. But what they did with Signet was it was for the first time really that I was aware of anyway, they actually took some of the malt and caramelized it and that's where you get those chocolatey malty notes. And when I was actually over there when it released, and I was like, game changer. I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna push it as far as you can push it without disrupting your mash. So we use so much specialty malt in the dark arts that it's as far as you can push the caramelization of malt until you have an unstable mash, right? Because your ethanol yields get too low, but you get so much flavor, and so it's like you're threading the needle on it, and that's what's so awesome about it. Ferrari monster truck.
Well, and this takes me to a thought that I had, because I know you're an art lover. Does that love of art and seeing the different, the paint, the strokes, all that kind of play into what you're doing there with bourbon, like, and whiskeys?
Man, yeah, absolutely. And so it's like the more flavors you have to blend, it's like the more colors you have to paint with, And I mean, sometimes you want to paint a picture with 3 colors, but sometimes you want more, And so that's honestly the only reason we do any blending. With stuff from Kentucky, Indiana, Tennessee, is just, it gives you more variety and you can be more creative. But again, that's getting harder and harder to do, and it's not as fun as it used to be, where you could talk to you get to know everybody, and they would say, hey, yeah, we got some whiskey you can try, and you're like, oh my God, this stuff is so good, like I want to buy it from you, and then you buy it and you blend it, and the stuff that we've blended in our whiskeys over the years, people wouldn't even believe me if I told you can just think of the hardest whiskey to get, and I can tell you that that's been a staple part of our whiskey for a long time. But it gets harder and harder, and honestly, I have to say this, the grained glass stuff we make, I like better. It's bigger whiskey, and that's what I like, but the art, the having more to paint with, you can do more, make more flavors, and that's why you barrel finish, and that's why you use different ages. And I just I have utmost respect for the heritage of bourbon, and and it's very important, I think, if you're a huge brand, that your product tastes identical every time, right? And so it gets sort of robotic in how you do it. And that, if I had to get robotic, my heart would be broken. You know what I mean? It's like, for me, what keeps it interesting is tasting every single barrel and saying, okay, guys, the next 6 months, we're going to tweak the blend and kind of move this way. And hey, everybody put together your best blends, and let's put our palettes together and make some choices. And that's why I go to work every day. It's getting to do that.
Yeah, what I like about you guys, just from what you told us the past hours, that you take risks. There's especially you take a lot of risks. You're just like, what the hell? Let's go ahead and try this. Let's see how it turns out. And even you're talking about blending and like getting some stuff from Tennessee and Kentucky. There's so many craft distilleries that really just rely on sourcing to do their entire line. Which I have no issue whatsoever, but I think it's super cool that you're like, we'll use that every now and then, but we're still making our own stuff too, and this stuff can compete with anything in the world. And I think that's what's super unique about you guys.
Yeah, there's like, you can come at it from the approach of like a business model, and don't get me wrong, I do take the business model very seriously, and the numbers have to work, but that's not where I came at it from. That's not at all why I did it. I expected just to hopefully break even, but probably not break even. Fortunately had done well, and as a physician in a successful practice, I had some money, and I was like, cool. Like if I got to chuck in $100,000 a year to this business to do what I want for 30 years, 40 years, cool. I'm gonna do it. And so that's it. That's just why
that's awesome.
That's cool.
That's what we do. So I was lucky to be able to do it, and I guess that's why we were successful. Just because it was a project that came purely out of passion, but I didn't give an F. It was like, I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna make the whiskey I want to make.
That's it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's, I think, what's key is you're making the whiskey you want to make. You're not trying to make it for someone else necessarily. I know, when you find the 86 proof, you're looking at things, but you're making it for what you like. I mean, especially when you talk about the kind of the Scotch style whiskey, the malt whiskey. There's not a lot of. I don't feel like there's a ton of people doing that, and that's just something you're passionate about. And I think that comes through in all the bottles.
Definitely.
It'll be a big category in the future. You know, the American single malt, it's going to be huge, and but it's not yet. It's just and people have to be patient too. You know, we've got to get that category buttoned down, and then what's going to happen is everyone's going to be releasing really young malt whiskey. You know, because it doesn't age as fast as bourbon. You know, if it's not 8 or 10 or 12 years old, it's just people aren't going to like it. And so I think that there's been a lot of that out there, you know, because I mean, for most cases, it's like you've got to cash flow, you've got to find a way. So you're either releasing younger whiskey or you're trying to force the age, you know, in a smaller format barrel or throwing it in a hot, you know, shipping container out in the sun or, you know, adding oak adjunct to it or whatever. You know, the whiskey will age faster, but when you get that angular young oak, it never goes away, and so it'll dominate what's beautiful. And what's beautiful about malt whiskey is all the subtle notes that come together. You know, it's like there's just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different things you can pick out of really nice Scotch, particularly like the Highland style Scotch that's not like, you know, dominated by peat or whatever. People are gonna have to be patient, and so it's just taking a while to get it off the ground. I think because people are trying to release stuff too early, because it's hard. You know, I mean, you gotta eat. So I get it, yeah. But that category will come around. You know, I mean, it's a very different approach to like what the Japanese did, right? So the Japanese said, you know, we like Scotch. We think we can do it even better, you know, and man, they did. You know, the Japanese whiskeys are some of the best. The American craft distillers are more like, hey, we love like all these whiskeys, so let's take a whack at it. And but oh shit, you know, we got to eat, so we got to start putting out some younger whiskey and see if people like it. So I think that's kind of the setting us back a little bit, but not for too much longer.
Now, before we wrap up, anyone have any other questions? Because I feel like there might be a couple.
Yeah, I'll let you go.
So that $12,000 Scotch bottle that you brought, what was the bottle? And you know, what is your favorite distillery in Scotland?
Yeah. The most expensive bottle of Scotch I ever bought was a Tully Bardine. That was I think it was like a 1950 or something like that, and I got it from an independent bottler in Scotland, and it was like the biggest sherry bomb I ever had. And they bought a barrel of it, and that barrel yielded like 3 bottles. You know, it was like it had sat around for so long.
What?
Yeah. And what was that one? So I think that was an $18,000 bottle.
Is it gone?
Oh yeah. I drink it, man. I do not hoard. I'll get my distillers together, and actually I do tastings with my whole staff. Like, so we'll do 12 people per tasting, and I'll teach them how to nose and taste. And you know, it's really important for the distillers and the guys blending to know all this. And so, you know, they sort of like have the regimen and they get it down pat. But I do it with my whole staff, and we'll all like do them randomly at, you know, 5 o'clock on a Tuesday or whatever. People will sign up, and I'll bring everything out. You know, they'll be, oh, what's, you know, this is like, that was pretty good. What was that? Oh, that was the Highland Park 30. You know, that was the only whiskey that ever scored 100. And you know, but yeah. But Highland Park is probably, man, they're just, I love Highland Park. Their stuff is probably my favorite because it's got all the subtlety of like a Highland style, but it'll have a lot of smoke and a tiny bit of peat. I just think they're perfectly balanced. But and I don't remember what the other one was, the 12 grand bottle. I'm sure I got it written down somewhere. But I mean, I don't hoard whiskey, I drink it.
Good.
I drink it.
That's good.
I do regret drinking all my Japanese whiskey when I thought that I'd always be able to get it, though. You know what I mean? now you can't get shit. And it's funny is Greg Hughes, he's the president of Beam Suntory for North America. He's a friend of mine, and he can't get they have all the good shit. He can't even get any of it. Like that's how hard it is to get it right now. Because they're just they're biding their time. They're not going to put it out until it's ready.
I wanted to ask, about just the future in the company, moving forward, I guess, let's say the next 5 years, and I know it's probably a very broad question for you, because I just feel like sometimes you guys might wake up and just be like, what the hell, let's try this. But, do you guys plan on maybe releasing some older products? Are you guys starting a single barrel program? What's that kind of the 5-year plan for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, next 3 to 5 years, we're just really doubling back, focus on whiskey. So I'm just all over the place, and I love flavors. So, we'll spend time doing hey, let's do 5 versions of gin, and hey, let's make gin with spruce tips, and let's make gin from lodgepole pine, and let's make gin from lodgepole pines that just died from bark beetles. And so it's I'm all over the place. But in the short term, 3 to 5 years, it's squarely focusing on the whiskeys. What I would like to do is I want to slowly move the blend to be even more rye forward. And I would say that's my biggest objective on the bourbon side right now. As far as barrel finishes and stuff go, we're just going to do one-offs. I'm not planning on bringing in a whole new line of barrel finishes, but when opportunity knocks, we'll do it. Like we did a couple barrels of Chateau Yquem, Sauterne finish that were just incredible. But Chateau Yquem is whatever, $800 for a $375 bottle of. So it's we'll keep doing that kind of crazy stuff, but really the single malt, American single malt category is going to be big. So we're getting the 2 clans out. So we're getting all the halos off of the dark arts, and that's basically it. I mean, we'll release some super old stuff and one-offs, and we do this stuff all the time. When we do that stuff, it's only available at the distillery. We had this awesome collaboration we did with Breckenridge Brewery. It was called Sexy Motor Oil. I don't know if you can see it.
Sexy Motor Oil.
But this one was absurdly awesome. So they made an Imperial Stout, aged it in a Breck bourbon barrel. We got the barrels back within 20 minutes. We had them recharged with whiskey, and we finished them in that for quite a while, over a year. And our fans knew all about this, and we released it at the distillery. We showed up that day, line all the way down the road, and it sold out as fast as we could get the people through. It took 40 minutes, and then it was gone. So doing that kind of stuff. We are actually, speaking of Breckenridge Brewery, we're getting ready to do some really cool collaborations with those guys. And so what we've been doing is expanding on this project to where they make a beer and they age it in our barrels, and then we get those barrels back and then finish the whiskey in it. And you just have to keep doing that enough until you can release them both at the same time. And we're getting ready to start doing that. So we're going to start releasing the whiskey and the beer side by side in liquor stores. And it's a pretty big project. We're going to do one on Father's Day, and then the big one will be around in end of the year, around Christmas time. And it'll be cool because you can buy a 6-pack of the beer and a bottle of the bourbon, and you get $10 off the SKU, and you can just ring it up right there.
Nice.
That's awesome. We love working with the brewers, man. They're so creative, and they have, again, more flavors, more stuff to paint your picture.
Oh yeah.
With. So it's awesome.
I was gonna say, talking to Nicole Austin from George Dickel, she draws a lot of inspiration off of craft brewers because of what you said. They can do different things. They can find different notes. They basically could there's no category at times for different things for them, and they can have some fun. I was gonna say, how much fun is it for you to do those wild projects, like working with Breckenridge Brewing, which I enjoy their beers as well. D, you may or may not, I don't know. It's hard to say what you might enjoy as far as beer. But how much fun is it for you to do those fun projects and just be creative? Like you sound like you definitely always want to be.
Yeah, I mean that's the best part. Like what I like going to work when I get to do the stuff that I thought I was going to be doing when I started the distillery. So it's that kind of stuff. It's the creative projects and the people, and the stuff that's not as fun is risk management, HR, contracts, trademarks, insurance. It's all that stuff, and we're pretty thin in our C-suite, so it's just like shoulder so much pain. And I mean, I do not. I think I do an all right job at it, but it's not my favorite thing to do. I love being down on the floor and hanging out with the distillers and blending whiskey and leading tastings and collaborating with brewers and stuff like that. That's that's what gets you out of bed.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. And then I guess we'll wrap it up with what was everyone's favorite, or you don't have to say. You can just say you loved them all.
If you ever, for some reason, have a bunch of this that you just need to get rid of, let me know.
All right. I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure I just heard you pop your bottle, and
I just did. I just poured another one.
This is my favorite. It has some really interesting notes.
Yeah.
Nose and palate are not what I
told my staff when I'm like, all right, guys, like we had it all ready, and I'm like, okay, we tasted like the whole staff. I'm like, we're gonna taste you on. We've got 4 versions of this, and I'm gonna taste you on it. And I said, but I gotta warn you, like once we release this, I'm terrified because we may not sell any other bourbon.
We're supposed to have another person here on the Zoom, but he was out of town, and I have his bottles. And when I opened this Rum Cask Finish, I texted him and I said, "Hey, I know I have 4 bottles, but you might only get 3 because I might keep your rum."
The way it goes, man.
Yeah, Chris might be a little short on a bottle, but no, I love what you guys are doing, and like I said, the passion that you put into it comes through. No doubt about it.
Definitely.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm a fangirl now. Trust me.
Well, we're all here. Well, thanks.
Well, Bryan, I really appreciate you taking the time, and D.A., thank you guys for doing another one of these, and Chris. Maybe D will keep your bottles. Maybe he won't. I don't know. They might just magically disappear. There's just something about a flight night that is just so much fun. I appreciate everyone coming on and sharing some pours with us. We'll have another one hopefully next month. We got some details here just in a second on our June and early July weeks. They're going to be a little bit special and a little bit uber focused as well. Don't forget to check us out on social media at Hop Spirits, all one word, on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. There you can catch every Monday night our brand new Give It a Try highlights, our cocktail recipes, and just a whole lot of fun as well. Remember, at Hop Spirits, all one word, on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. And if you can, leave us a nice comment on your favorite podcast player. Give us a big thumbs up. Subscribe to us on YouTube. All of that helps, and it's really appreciated. And guess what? In June, we go to summer school. That's right. We kick off a fun session called Summer School 2021, where we'll be talking about how to start your whiskey collection, building innovative brands, and so much more. It all happens in June and hopefully early July if everything comes to fruition. Also, our next giveaway is coming up here shortly. Hopefully, it'll be in May like I promised, but it might be in early June as well. And let's just say it'll be your chance to be a superhero. You want to stay tuned to our social media for that as well. Until next time, cheers, everyone.